Namaste everybody. Welcome to Chitti Media, the Festival of Bharat. My name is Sharan Sethi, your host. Today we have a senior BJP functionary, a leader who was a part of the ABVP in Andhra Pradesh and who has been personally targeted physically by the Naxalites, and since then there is no stopping him. He was deputed to Jammu and Kashmir by the party and he's been the party's general secretary as well for a very long time, and currently he's the in charge of Madhya Pradesh. Please join me in welcoming Muralidhar Rao Garu. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Welcome.
I hope you, your staff, your family are all safe and healthy.
Yeah, definitely. COVID and COVID impact, still my family and everybody is safe and active.
Right. That's absolutely heartening to hear, sir. Today we'll be talking about the growing nexus between Marxists and Islamists. And especially this is a concern not just for India but around the world, because India is now surrounded by at least 3 countries which has active presence of radical Islamic groups. And they have been supported from outside as well. We've been seeing what is happening in Afghanistan. And this is definitely a matter of concern. So, Muralidhar, my first question to you is, you were a part of the RSS BJP combined for a very long time, even before the ideology could sort of penetrate the South, especially Andhra Pradesh. What drew you closer to this ideology initially, sir?
It's simple and without any kind of complexities, patriotism and nation first approach. It was very clear from the activities and the appealing factors. Slogan like Bharat Mata Ki Jai and working for the country and the country's unity. And even in the context of fight against Naxalites, when people not just in the entire country, but even in Andhra Pradesh were not very much aware that their concept of nation, it is not the way we have. And they ideologically have a declared objective that their war is against state of India. Their war is not against just BJP or RSS or some ideological aspects. Their war has always been a war against Indian state. And they always openly declared that Kashmir must secede. And we should support the self-determination or the fight of self-determination of the Kashmiris. So the person belonging to Naxalite cadres working in remote areas of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana or on campuses, they used to give slogan in support of the separatists and the terrorists of Jammu Kashmir, and they used to support in the similar way the forces in the Northeast who were working for separation. So, simple, irrespective of what we had and what we were having, in terms of power, in terms of clout, in terms of resources and this and that, it was a plain dedication and devotion for the Indian nationhood concept. So that attracted and that made me to work clearly for the RSS and BJP ideology.
Right. Thank you for sharing that with us, sir. Now that brings me to my next question, and perhaps this is what me and a lot of people, even our audience, has been very eager to know about this. In 1986, when you were a part of the ABVP, you were targeted by the Naxalites, and what problem we see today in India is almost non-existent, because we've grown up in a phase where even the UPA and the NDA governments have continuously booted out the Naxals from Chhattisgarh and Andhra Pradesh. But you grew up at a time when shots were fired directly at you and 18 pellets are still in your body from Naxals. For our younger audience who do not know about this, can you please tell the trauma that you went through?
First, I would like to explain how I was studying my graduation in Warangal. Warangal was the hotbed of Naxalites, and it was the epicenter of their entire leadership and activity. So in that Warangal, definitely there was nobody who was confronting, and even police force was not aware of the kind of ideology they were preaching, and they were not aware of, and they were not equipped also to face Naxalites in those days, in
Right.
1980s. And special force and special combat force and all these force, these the creations are of, afterwards, those things. And I was, in the process of building a resistance movement among the students and youth, uh, starting from towns to villages in the Warangal district and in North Telangana. At that time, I became target in Warangal, and some of my colleagues I have lost in the process, got killed. And ultimately, organization leadership thought I should change my work place from Warangal to Usmania University, Hyderabad.
Right.
So I got shifted, and then I became Union General Secretary, Student Union of Usmania University. Again, the same story on the campus. They were holding a monopoly of sorts, and they were also a challenge to everybody. So, in such a situation, nationalist movement ABVP, picked up momentum, and we became more popular. And when I was general secretary, we started winning more seats. And in the process, again, they targeted me. And in 1986, after finishing my lunch in the mess, hostel mess, I came out with two or three my closest friends. And a squad, normally they constitute a squad to eliminate a targeted person, class enemy, and they do perfect intelligence work and all, and they track the person where that person goes and all. They track, and they track for sometimes months and years, and they
Right.
prepare a diary on based on that. So they plan of, they plan this execution based on this entire intelligence work. So after I came out of the mess, after finishing my lunch, the squad was ready and searching. So they fired me at point blank. So after that, again, there was, they fired again, and they threw one or two homemade bombs. And then after, I fell down, and I got up, and I started running towards the police station where it was. So naturally, the squad chased me for 100, 150, 200 meters, thinking that I will collapse and I will not be able to run. So after seeing that I am now going towards police station direction, so they thought it is not better to chase further. So they retreated. So that way, then I went to police station. From there, I got one sub-inspector. No vehicle was there. Then we got auto, and I went to nearby very big government hospital, Gandhi Hospital. There I got admitted. So that way, uh, some of the pellets from my body which were in the danger area, they removed immediately. And the doctors left certain pellets which were not, of course, they are in the surrounding muscles of heart, but they thought it is not so dangerous and difficult to remove. So they left those pellets. So that way I carry the pellets as souvenirs.
Right. That's, I hope a lot of youngsters who are watching this today are definitely inspired. And of course, I'm petrified just hearing about the struggle that you went through. And because of nationalists like you, we are a much more safer country today. Now, Muliji, I want to ask a small follow up on that. Now, you've grown up in a very hostile student political environment back in the 80s and 90s. What do you see any changes? Because even when I grew up in college, which is very recently, it's the same environment. the JNU controversy happened, and now we have somebody yelling, Bharat ke tukde honge, inshallah, inshallah. And we also have people who are telling that we will strategically cut off the chicken's neck in the Northeast so that Northeast is separated from India. So do you see any change, or do you think these Marxists and Islamists are restricted to student campuses today?
Now, of course, there is a sea change. It is not a small change or incremental change. There is a complete change in the entire landscape of India. You know, when we were fighting against Naxalites, first there was no realization even among the mainstream establishment and intellectual and policy establishment and leadership and who were governing at the time, that these forces were not simply fighting against RSS or BJP, but they were fighting against Indian state. That realization was not there at that time, and that acceptance was not there. I remember even today, you know, as a student leader, I used to carry dossiers, you know, number of dossiers prepared, how they are fighting against Indian state, ideologically, politically, and also militarily. So we used to carry all those informations and documents and everything to Delhi. For your information, I can definitely say even people like Arun Shauri, who was in PUCL at that time, he was not closely associated with RSS or BJP at that time. He was in PUCL. He was one of the important leaders of the PUCL at that time. Even to convince him, these Naxalites are not enemies of BJP alone, they are enemies of the country or enemies of the state. So I used to come frequently. I used to meet many people in the establishment and in the journalistic world, because there was an impression that Naxalites were fighting for the rights of the poor. Yes. You know, that aspect was only highly propagated and highly registered. So that was the situation. And persons like George Fernandez and all these people, they used to support. And even persons like leaders like N.T. Ramarao used to call Naxalites are, you know, patriots. They are fighting for the common poor persons, like that. So there was a kind of feeling. And that was the reason many political parties used to, you know, have collaborative relationship or alignments with the Naxalites at times, you know, in order to win elections or in order to stay in power, like that. Now, irrespective of party, still those things are there, but in the mainstream, there is a realization that who are the threats to the nation. You know, there is a consensus that now among the establishment and among the media, there may be a silent supporters or passive supporters, but vocally, there is nobody to say that enemies of the state aspect is now well known. This has become established. This is the sea change. Now, this is point one. Point two, you know, Naxalites have many times got aligned with other terrorist forces and separatist forces, particularly belonging to radical Islam, and also in the, you know, evangelists in the Northeast and all these people. So this also now there is a broad consensus among the intellectuals who not necessarily belong to BJP, RSS, but they don't view these people as friends of the country or supporters of the nation, nationalist school of thought. So this is a kind of wide and deeper realization has taken place. This change is there. So we have to understand that. Of course, now there is a globally also the realization, this leftist thought and ultra leftist thought, there are few takers all over the world. Their clout has greatly diminished in different countries and different societies. So ecosystem is not in favor of the ultra left forces now, not just in India, but all over the world. Now the young people in different countries, you know, of course, I would say nationalism and feeling of nationalism is natural in every society and every country. But each society's concept of nationalism need not be same. Of course, our nationalism can never become identical with the Western countries. We have a deeper cultural roots. But young people all over the world are becoming more and more nation-centric. So this also has, greatly diminished the space for the ultra left all over the world.
Right. I agree
So
with
that
you.
also has weakened the left movement in India.
Right. I agree with you. But when we look at recently, we marked the 100th anniversary of the Mopla riots. And even after 100 years, we've not been able to convince the younger generation that no, it was not an anti-peasant or some other form of ideological riot, but it was a targeted anti-Hindu riot. And that sort of an academic ideological fight continues even today. Which brings me to my next question. In the last 5 to 7 years, or even in the last 1 or 2 decades, we've seen the problem of Naxalism steadily decline, especially in Andhra Pradesh. Now, it is one thing to say that government A or government B or some political party is responsible for the reduction of deaths. Now, when we are looking at this in terms of casualties, then only numbers will be seen. But Murliji, what is more important is that we are fighting an ideology. So, in that sense, how do you think the BJP and the RSS ideology has helped in fighting the Naxalist ideology?
Here I would like to take you to a more important challenge. After 1947, after India becoming independent, the biggest I can call it as even conspiracy. Establishment conspiracy. They have created a history, based on the suitable facts for the people who were running the government and who were interested in running the government and leading the country. Instead of making things very open and making things to understandable to the people, they have always suppressed certain facts. They felt that Hindus, in that way great injustice has been done to Indians and Hindus by the Congress. There has been, after Nehru taking over, a collaborative research and a collaborative history writing and a collaborative educational system along with the Marxists, means left and Congress combination, that started working. And I don't see their intention was anti-national or so. They might have felt, if correct history is written, a nation cannot be built. In order to create a nation, we have to create a generation which is forgetful of the past. Right. So, whitewashing the Muslim or Islamic atrocities, whitewashing the medieval exploitation and injustice done to Indian society, all these things they have deliberately done. And in that process, Mopla rebellion kind of things also, Khilafat movement things that also were not focused or somehow justified. Even in Jammu Kashmir, movements were justified and they gave reasons that in the name of peasant and in the name of poor and this and is, these struggles were tried, got interpretation that Marxist interpretation or economic factors have made them to fight like this. So those things. Now, society is realizing, and there are efforts, and the alternative histories, alternative interpretations of Indian history is coming. And even biggest casualty is Gandhian struggle and non-violent struggle only could bring the independence to India. This is also, I am not a person who believes in violent philosophy, But I am not a person to accept that this Indian struggle should be interpreted in these terms. When we were fighting against British, the revolutionaries' contribution could not have been minimized. But in the process they had done. So definitely all those things are coming up, and slowly people are realizing. And as a nation, we are balancing now. We are becoming balanced, and a new version is also coming. Definitely in coming days, these things will be shelved and will have to be shelved as people are realizing. So now I come to this point. So in this process, as a nation, people are becoming more national oriented and more nationalist and more identity conscious. So everybody is going towards roots. And in this process, you see democracy is helping, and democratic debates are getting, deep and deep, so deeper. So this is the, this. It does not mean this process will create a conflict and uncompromising conflict with the Muslims or other people. No, in fact, it will create a new awareness, and what are the gray areas, and we have to forget, and as a nation how we should grow. So by compromising you will not, but by forgetting and ignoring you will definitely. But this is a process going. Now coming to next slides, this realization that nationalists, these communists and our, for example, in Kerala now, the issue is becoming, why you put Stalin photo in the Communist Party office?
Right.
Now people are questioning.
Absolutely.
And there are some Congress or somebody, now everybody has to question. So people are questioning. So this we have to understand why Stalin has become a hero, and the other side, nationalists and BJP people are villain for the communists. What is the interpretation? What is the logic they have? So now a person who is responsible for, killing so many people in the modern world, you don't have such a dictator who is responsible for so many killings, is getting a place in the Communist Party office. And the party and ideology and the cadres who are responsible, even they who are contributing to sustain the Indian constitution and working within the framework of the constitution, where they have every right to question. So such people have become enemies. So this logic now everybody understanding. Now in this situation, ultra left forces are ideologically, that ecosystem and that favorable atmosphere is not there globally, and it's not there in India. This is a point one. Point two, this awareness to go towards the roots and identity is also making them, because they never focused on the Indian identity. They always worked on obliteration of Indian identity. So that even the local caste struggles are also not favoring the communist gaining the influence. So this is the second factor. So in such a situation, now state governments first, and now Indian government with active support, very active support. They are enemies of the state and enemies of the country and enemies of Indian military. All these things now understood. So intelligence support and equipping the police forces and modernizing the police forces and for combating ideologically and combating politically. So all these things put together, now their influence, because of the good governance driven by the center, supported by the Indian government's military and paramilitary forces and intelligence supports and inputs, definitely in the Bastar and the epicenters of the Naxalites areas, their activity has come down. And Indian government in the last few years, particularly after Modi ji's came, developmental activities, infrastructure development in the remotest areas and the forest areas and all. So that also made these people to, get restricted, get confined. So all efforts put together, their impact, influence, and their programs of mobilization, and in the process of their military kind of attacks, all have come down.
Right. Thank you so much for that elaborate answer, Murliji. Now, you were telling me about how from Warangal you were deputed to Osmania University because there was a need for Murliji there because there was a much bigger threat over there. Now, after that, you were deputed to Kashmir when the insurgency was at its peak. Now, does your party pick and choose the most violent places in India or hostile places and say, Muralidhar Rao should go here because there is a need for him? And how do you accept this? What makes you do this? And can you tell us about the time when you were in Kashmir?
Definitely, I got into this ideology and I got into such kind of targeted situations where, if somebody asked me today, I have to say, I never thought I will become a leader of this movement at the national level. And my closest friends and myself, we never thought that I will survive. Many people faced a similar kind of situation. Most of them have not survived. So, surviving the situation itself is a boon for me. Now, I feel when the insurgency was at peak, in the entire student movement and our fraternity, there might have been an impression at the top people that who can handle this situation, who can work in this kind of violent situation, because there was no scope for moving very freely into remote areas of the Kashmir. So there was a need of interaction with the military intelligence. There was a need of interaction with and working in disguise, traveling with different names, and not allowing anybody to track, and not leaving traces of my journey. So these things require a kind of training and a kind of mental orientation. So at that time, my organization leadership might have thought that I will be suitable and appropriate person to work. Definitely, I remember even today, in certain places, in Lal Chowk and in Srinagar and in Anantnag and Baramulla, when I went, many times, what happened, crossfire situation. And many times I got trapped and in crossfire situations, and both sides, the AK-47 is, with whirring sound, and all bullets are going in this direction and that direction. And many times, groups attacked my, group, when I was addressing some internal meetings and all. So anyhow, I have a job to do in the God's dispensation, so I got saved. But definitely, at that time, in Kashmir, lot of pessimism was there. Kashmir, will it remain in the present physical form with India or not? P.V. Narasimha Rao was the prime minister, and America was creating lot of pressure to dilute our commitment and compromise with the separatists and create some kind of mechanism.
Right.
So those discussions known to everybody. So such was the situation. At that time, there it was not a political divide. We were working for the nation, and we were working with the central government, which was headed by Congress also at that time, because saving Kashmir was very important, and mobilizing the people for Kashmir's integrity with India, and standing against separatists was most difficult and important task. So I am very fortunate, and because of that, simple commitment is different, and under developing and understanding and becoming one with the physical nation and its communities is also a separate thing. So I got an opportunity, and I definitely cherish those memories.
Absolutely. I mean, thanks to leaders like you, today we are seeing that Kashmir is a much more stable and peaceful valley. And for the first time ever, Indian flag was hoisted permanently at Lal Chowk, and that is definitely due to contribution from leaders like you and everybody else. Murliji, now the Taliban has gained ground in Afghanistan, and this definitely means a threat. I mean, we were talking about how we were deputed in Kashmir in the 1990s, and Taliban surfaced back in 1996, and we saw what happened in Kashmir. So, in that sense, experts are already telling that the Kashmir Valley may face terrorism. What difference do you see in India's preparation this time, and are you confident that we will handle Valley better than we handled in 1996?
First of all, there is a recognition all over the world and in India too. The Taliban is a challenge. Previously, this adequate awareness and understanding about Taliban as a challenge was not there, neither globally nor at the national level. So this is the change which is going to help anybody who wants to handle the situation. This is a very big resource. Now coming to, today in Afghanistan, we see Taliban is victorious. Definitely, nobody can say it is not a victory for them. There is a message to the entire Islamic world and even to the whole world that Afghanistani people cannot be subjugated or cannot be submitted, cannot become submitted or submissive by an outside force of, America. So that a kind of message with this victory of Taliban has gone to, but it has, other dimensions also. It is not a clear road for Taliban, fighting against America and making America to flee or making America to leave Afghanistan is one-dimensional war. It does not mean that they have won Afghanistan. They have won in this war or battle, but still they have not won that leading Afghanistan as a nation. So this is a far bigger challenge to Taliban. So what makes them, we have to see how they and their leadership will get evolved, whether their focus will be to govern Afghanistan or to run a jihadi war globally. What would be the priority for the present day Taliban leadership? World is going to see. Unless they establish in real governance in Afghanistan, neither they will become acceptable in Afghanistan, nor they will become acceptable for the whole world. So they have a far bigger question than India or the people at the global level. So it is left to them. World is going to watch. If they feel that they have a bigger war at the global level and they have to take that as a priority, then their own survival is not taken for granted in Afghanistan. Unless they become inclusive, unless they demonstrate a mature version or interpretation of Islam, they cannot survive in Afghanistan first. So for them also there is a challenge and a test to pass. Now coming to India, we are in the immediate neighborhood. America can feel comfortable and remote because it's a remoteness. The distance is in between. Yes. Of course, 9/11 incident has demonstrated threat to security, threat to peace in one place is a threat and challenge to peace all over the world. Only immediate neighbors will get affected is not a nowadays phenomena. Even then, America sometimes can forget or may afford to forget. But India as a country in the immediate neighborhood, we have to be very alert, very vigilant. Both its religious influence and ideological influence, as a political Islam, not just driven by them, but their own simple victory, how much influence that will have in Kashmir among the Kashmiri Muslim separatists. That also we have to handle. So definitely India has to prepare. And Pakistan as a country which has nurtured the separatists and terrorists in Afghanistan, how it is going to, in which direction Taliban goes. If Taliban leadership goes in the direction of global Islamic war, sometimes Pakistan may become a winning country. If Taliban in Afghanistan goes in the direction of nation building of Afghanistan, then Pakistan also may have a problem, because the disputes between Afghanistan and Pakistan are also there. So there are number of challenges are there, complexities and contradictions. It is not a clear roadmap. Now coming to India, Indian Muslims, there are some forces or some elements which may feel that victory of Taliban is good and worth celebrating. But the large number of Muslims are safe and living in peace, and the rights they have enjoyed in terms of fundamental rights, equal rights, and rights for women, and rights for the different sections like Shias and Ahmadiyas and all these people, those things, will not be available if this kind of Wahhabism or Talibanism takes high road. So Indian Muslims also, large number of people have to become vigilant and sensitized, and they have to understand the real thing. So in such a situation, now coming to the state, Indian state, under the leadership of Modi ji and under the leadership of BJP, there is a clarity. The important in the fight is you should have a clarity. So clarity of thought is there, and the purpose is also there. So in my view, I am aware of the challenges. Taliban and its emergence is a challenge in the context of Kashmir, and the context of Pakistan and Taliban alignment, and in the context of China, Pakistan and Taliban alignment. Definitely there is a challenge, but there are enough dimensions and where India can work on. For example, Iran, Russia, China, and Turkey, all these people have helped Taliban in fighting against America. But I don't think they will continue to help, because Iran has its own interests in Afghanistan, not aligned with Taliban. So here, Indian government has to play a role, a motivating role, and a kind of nudging role to make Taliban to become inclusive in governance in Afghanistan, and carry the development issues in Afghanistan. And third, in definitely in India, internal security and the border security, definitely for the worst situation we have to get prepared, in whether it is a terrorist challenge or alignment challenge of different countries at the border. All these things, Indian army has to be prepared for any eventuality.
Absolutely. If those are the external threats, I just have a small follow-up for you, Murliji, especially since you've seen the peak of the insurgency in Kashmir. Recently, we observed the death of Syed Ali Shah Gilani, who is the founder, financier, father of Indian separatism and terrorism. Now, you've seen the Hurriyat conference and their agenda very up close. Do you think this is the final nail in the coffin, and the entire scenario in Kashmir Valley is going to change after this?
And definitely, inclusive government which we have in India, that is making Muslims also in Kashmir to feel comfortable. Now the spectacle outside, for example, what is happening in Afghanistan, women are on the roads and insecure, and they are fleeing, and they are even catching the wheels of the aircrafts. So this is the scenario, this is the spectacle. And this is the thing which everybody is watching, including Kashmiri women in India. We have to understand the women in Kashmir and the minorities in Kashmir, they were never having such problems. They never faced such problems. And today, particularly after the reforms in Jammu Kashmir, developmental projects and also participatory things and the representative character of the state and its polity has gone up. And the minorities within minorities does not mean that non-Islamic minorities, even the minorities within Islam or among Muslims, they are also now happy in Jammu Kashmir. So this old generation got support and sponsorship and various logistical supports from Pakistan and other countries. They are now slowly receding and their influence is going down. Definitely, our ability to fight war even within Jammu Kashmir against anti-national forces has got strengthened.
Right. Murliji, you speak about inclusive government. And yes, of course, it's the social fabric of India because it's a Hindu civilizational state that we're all secular by nature. We, we do not need a reinforcement in any text or any other form. But, speaking of that, if we look at the internal threats that we have to our democracy itself and what is happening, especially with the rise of Marxist Islamist alliance within India, whether it is say in West Bengal or in Kerala, we are seeing how vulnerable youth are being radicalized. Now, people from North Kerala are being recruited into ISIS in Syria, Yemen, and other areas of Afghanistan. Now, how do you think we need to counter these challenges? And be coming from the Sangh and the BJP perspective, you have lost a lot of people in ideological battles because pracharaks and swayamsevaks have been killed time and again in West Bengal, Kashmir, and in Kerala. So what do you have to say? How do you promise the security for these people so that you can keep on fighting, sir?
In this, first we have to understand, I don't see rise in alignment of Marxist and Islamic forces more than what we had. I would, for your knowledge, I would like to share Communist Party CPI, first political party to support the Pakistan concept, passed resolution. So from the beginning, we have the history of this alignment. It is not a new development. Always Marxists in India from the beginning, they aligned with, somehow they are, they demonstrated, they always presented themselves as anti-religion or sometimes irreligion. Yes. But only they worked in the context of Hindu, only they worked as irreligious. They worked as anti-religious forces. But they always aligned with the Muslims and Islam. And they always supported the separation. I mean, so the first party to support Pakistan concept. So we can never forgive, and Indian society has understood that always. So there is no emotional connect between Indian society and Indian communities with the Marxist thought process. Their influence has always been disproportionate. They enjoyed more clout than the mass following. Now coming to the point, definitely, but this challenge is a different challenge. There is a kind of alignment. It has not gone down, and it is helping the radical forces, radicalized arguments and radical interpretation. They are providing shield and cover for such forces and such arguments that we have to sensitize this country and we have to face. And in a democratic way, we have to mobilize the public opinion, and we are well known to do that, and we are capable of. Definitely, their influence will further go down, and they will not be able to increase their clout. I am very much confident. Now coming to Muslim, radicalization of Muslims. India as a country, we have to fight this radicalization of Muslims. But I would like to mention Muslims also have a stake in this fight. Unless they fight against these radical forces, whatever they do not have, they have to fight. They have to become more strong and strong. And like Dalit people, how to increase their rights and how to increase their clout and their strength and all these things they have to. But in a democratic fight, they should not lose what they have. So the silent majority among the Muslims, they cannot keep quiet and they cannot be passive in order to save whatever they have today. So my view is this fight is a two-pronged. As a country, we have to fight, and the Muslims, also have to participate in this fight against, preventing this radicalization. So these two things. If they do not fight, does not mean that India will not fight. India will definitely has to fight and show the way for the whole world. Fighting against radical and aggressive Islam, we have fought in the history, and we have that civilizational capacity. And today also, in the modern constitutional framework, Indian state will also fight and provide a path-breaking way to the whole world.
Absolutely. Murliji, I do have one more question for you. In one of your statements, you've mentioned that even Congress has enabled Maoist violence. People disagree, even in spite, the general people who are commenting on strategic affairs. They say that the BJP and the Congress may have ideological differences, but when it comes to fighting the Naxal or say the insurgents in the Northeast, they're somehow aligned towards the nationalistic cause. Now, you of course disagree because of your political reasons, but what makes you say that the Congress have enabled Maoist violence?
We have to understand what they are saying is a half-truth. I will not say a complete lie. The Congress has not fought against Naxalites or ultra-separatist forces. I will not say. But I will definitely not accept that they have fought and without any kind of collaboration and by non-compromising activity. I don't accept that. Politically, they always taken a line that political expediency to remain in power, to stay in power in different states, in Andhra Pradesh or in Madhya Pradesh, old Madhya Pradesh state where Chhattisgarh was there, and even in Chhattisgarh after formation, Jharkhand, if you go and collect the stories, there are documented stories. How leadership has compromised and how leadership has not equipped the police force adequately, how the logistical support was not provided matching to the challenge. These things, the story is not different. The way Nehru has not equipped the Indian state or Indian army when it came to Chinese aggression from outside, the same way they have done inside also. So they fought, but they have not fought in a committed way. Right. So these are the, it's a mixed story. But definitely now there is no space for them, because Indian society, there is a large scale realization among the people that enemies of the nation, enemies of the state can never become friends of a political party. So this realization has now, and this is the contribution of BJP to the Indian polity.
Okay.
Don't accept the enemies of the country as a political friends, as a collaborators, as partners. So this is the nation first approach. This is the biggest contribution of the BJP to Indian polity and Indian political discourse.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm sure our audience will have a lot of agreements with what you just said. Now, I know that I've taken a lot of your time, Murliji, so that brings me to my last question, which is slightly more political in nature. Murliji, the RSS is of course present even in the south, although people may not be very much aware of it in the urban centers. But the BJP is still not able to penetrate the south. In Karnataka, it's a different story where we are living. But that was more because of a regional stalwart like Yediyurappa ji. Now, despite attempts and despite taking up issues like the Sabrimala one in Kerala and states like Andhra Pradesh, it's slowly growing. But what does the party plan to do to sort of make their presence more stronger in the southern region? What is the strategy, sir?
No, BJP is gradually expanding even within the north also. Socially, we have expanded, and geographically also we have expanded from state after state. Gradually, we have added.
Right.
Definitely now the footprints are growing in the south, and BJP is becoming popular in terms of cadre number, in terms of influence, and in terms of building ecosystem. Definitely, as a national party and as a nationalist party, as Congress is vacating and Congress has vacated in the south, slowly the space is only taken up by BJP. There is no other national political party competing with BJP, even in south. Regionalization has taken place, and regional politics and regionalization of politics has become definitely a challenge, a different kind of political challenge for the BJP. We have to answer. Now, coming to your point, I would like to say, a nationalism as we understood in Uttar Pradesh, as we understood in Bihar, as we understood in Madhya Pradesh, are the above Vindhyas. It cannot be a similar interpretation and a similar articulation is going to increase our appeal or improve our acceptability in South. A nuanced nationalism has to be introduced by BJP. Understanding the regional pride more closely and incorporating the regional identity aspects into what we call nationalism. There should not be a nation versus region. There is no meaning for it. And our region there is no conflict between region and state and nation. So it means you have to articulate nationalism in a very nuanced way, incorporating the pride feeling of the local developments and local aspects, cultural aspects, and the diversity aspect also. Nationalism is not, our nationalism is not definitely a uniformity based, it is not a uniform thing. We accept diversity. So the diversity aspect has to be given importance when we articulate nationalism in South. Now, coming to the point, the last but most important thing is, ultimately, people do not understand philosophies, ideologies away from the context and away from the physical reality and away from the leaders. Right. So it cannot be an abstract fight. So we have to create living models, leadership. Through leadership, we have to speak to even southern people. So the people whom they feel and whom they accept, that kind of leadership has to be created, and this challenge BJP has to pass through.
Right. I'm very confident that we will see a bigger role that you and the party will play in its growth in the southern politics. Murliji, thank you so much. I know it's been a very, very busy day for you. You've taken so much of your time out for us. And I'm really grateful that you accepted our invite so quickly for a talk show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And of course, we will be inviting you for more such talks with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Chitti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.